Hi, this is Mick. In this video today I'll be showing you how to replace the timing belt and water pump on a 2013 Audi Q3 S-Line Quattro 2 litre diesel. The engine variant is CFFB and it's an 8UB. So the first thing we need to do is to get the car raised up into the service position and then we can make a start. Okay, the vehicle is now raised up at the front on axle stands. This side I always put two in just to make doubly sure. There's one just under here which is under the rear wishbone mounting bracket, just for added safety and security, that's all. Also, go around to the other side, the passenger side front wheel, put a wheel chock there to stop the car rolling forward, and also behind the rear wheel on this side to stop it rolling backwards. So that's now raised up. The next job is to go underneath and remove the engine under tray. So I'll be back in a minute. Right, to remove the under tray, there's quite a few screws and bolts. There's 3 bolts at the front. These are T25s. One there, one in the middle, and one at the other end. Just there. So that's those 3. There are 2 bolts sort of underneath, about halfway down, one on each side. That's there, and just at the other side there. And these 2 bolts are T45. There's also a number of posi screws, posi drive, down each side. There's 1, 2, and 1 at the front. That's 3 on this side, 3 on the other side, on the passenger side. There's also 1 at each end, 1 at each side at the back, 1 on this side and 1 at that side. Take all those out and the under tray will just drop out. Okay, we've now removed the under shield, the under tray. These posi screws, they just turn sort of 90 degrees and then the tray drops. They remain captive inside, so that's that. The next job, we've took the road wheel off on the driver's side using a 17mm socket. The next job is to remove the wheel arch inner lining. You can see this, okay, it's quite dark. Wheel arch inner lining and the splash guard at the bottom, that plastic splash guard. These are all, there's quite a few of them. These are T25 screws, bolts, and there's quite a few. So I'll get those took off now. This will give us better access to the crankshaft pulley. So I'll take these off now, and I'll come back to you in a short while. Okay, the splash guards are removed from under the wheel arch, and there you go. Access to the timing belt, crankshaft pulley. So there were 16 screws in total for the wheel arch liner. So that's sorted out. The next job on the bonnet, we need to disconnect the battery because we're going to be removing quite a few multi-plugs and bits of wiring, just moving them out of the way. So the battery first, squeeze that, push it up and then pull. Disconnect the negative only, which is under this flap, and that's a 10mm nut. It's easier to use a 10mm spanner for this because it's difficult to get a socket in with this flap. After we've done that, move to the other side. We disconnect the wiring plug for the coolant. Not just that little flap just pulls back this way, and then it just pulls off like that. The next one is the DPF differential pressure sensor. So we need to disconnect this plug here, and that's a little tab just under here, and it actually pushes inwards, so you squeeze it like that, push it in, and then that pulls off. So that's those two out of the way. Just take them out of the way like that so they don't get damaged. And the next one is the fuel pump pressure switch, which is this here. Once we've took that plug off there, the clip's just underneath. Once we've took that plug off there, we can just release these clips and just pull all the pipes out of the way. We've got this mounting bracket. Once we've took the DPF pressure sensor off, there's this mounting bracket to take off. So you undo that one there, that Torx bit. The Torx bolt just there. And down at the bottom you'll see splines. They're M40 fitting. So you need an M40 tool to get those two bolts. This bracket will then come off out of the way, so we'll crack on and see how we go. Okay, that's multi-plugs all disconnected. These fuel pipes just moved out of the way unclipped. Next job is to disconnect the bracket for the fuel filter, so we can just move the fuel filter around and out of the way and make things a little bit more flexible to get that top timing cover off, timing bolt cover. So to remove the fuel filter bracket, there is a 10mm bolt just there, and there's one right down at the bottom there, and you can see it right down there. So just two 10mm bolts, and then it just lifts up and out of the way. Once that's done, we'll then support the engine on this side with the trolley jack and a piece of timber, and then we can remove the engine bracket, the engine mounting bracket, which is all this here. So I'll get on with that, take 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll come back to you soon. Okay, right, we're back again. We've got the engine supported and the trolley jack and a piece of timber to spread the weight under there, and just lifted slightly to take pressure off the engine mounting. Go back above. Now I've got the fuel filter relocated. You must not disengage any fuel pipes or hoses. The fuel hoses, just leave them as they are. Just move it out of the way. Next step is to remove the engine mounting, this one, and the engine support bracket, which is this one here. The engine mounting is held on with 5 bolts. This one is a 13mm. You've got a 16 there, lower down. At the other side you've got another 16 down there. And then where it joins onto the engine support bracket, you've got two 18mm ones there and there. Once those 5 bolts are removed, the engine mounting should lift straight off. Then it's the engine support bracket. That's held on by 3 16mm bolts, one there, one at the other side, down there, and one underneath. It's easier to get to the other two from underneath. On this one, you've got a bracket here holding the coolant pipe with a 10mm bolt. You need to undo that first, and the one underneath is the same. And also, to make it easier to get the timing cover off, you need to remove this coolant sensor. Okay, that's the engine mount and the support bracket removed. Support bracket, you've got your 3 16mm bolts. For this top one you might have to raise the engine about 1 inch to get to it, and for the lower one you'll have to lower the engine slightly to get your socket on that one. That one very difficult to get out in the middle. I had to use a really small ratchet to get to that. These are the two positions where the coolant pipe was bolted on. When you've undone it all, this bracket then withdraws from underneath the car. So the next job we'll look at is the upper timing cover and then the auxiliary drive belt. Okay, this is the upper timing cover, just held on by 3 clips, one there, just literally clip it off, one under these 2 pipes, that one's off, and there's also one just down there. That's it. This cover literally just pulls off like that. So there you can see the timing belt. So the next job is to remove the auxiliary drive belt, as you can see down there, which is that one there, which controls your aircon and alternator. So right, I'll get underneath the car and show you how to do that. Right, okay, onto the auxiliary drive belt now, sometimes known as a serpentine belt. Right, underneath, hopefully you can see clearly, this is the auxiliary drive belt, it's your crankshaft pulley, aircon pump, drive belt tensioner, and up there you've got the alternator pulley. You can probably just see that. If you're going to reuse this belt, get a piece of chalk and mark on the direction of rotation. In this instance it's clockwise that way, that's the way the engine turns. So right, to actually remove the belt, using a 16mm socket on the tensioner there, if you push it clockwise approximately 45 degrees, you'll notice the drive belt slacken. There you go. You can now remove the belt, then let that tensioner back to its normal position, and then you need to remove the crankshaft pulley. There's 4 bolts using an M10 spline bit. Okay, at the top of the pulley there's a locating dowel, so it only goes back on one way. So right, let's crack on, get these removed, and then we'll look at the timing covers. Right, that's the auxiliary drive belt removed and the crankshaft pulley from here. When you're undoing these 4 bolts for the crankshaft pulley, obviously anti-clockwise, you'll have to hold the pulley with one hand to stop it turning the engine. They're not very tight, it's quite easy to do. So right, the next job is to remove this lower timing cover. I think this is only one piece. It's just a 1-piece cover. Quite a few of these models have a 2-piece where it's a central piece, and this last piece is called the lower one. So this is fastened on by 5 T30 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's one just up there. 5. They're T30. I've already loosened them off, so let's get this removed. That's one. 2. This is a bit awkward with the tension being in the way. That's We're getting there. And there's the fourth one. That's fourth, and the last one, which is up there. A bit awkward. Don't make things easy. She's coming. Right, that's all 5 off. So this should just come off. There you go. Everything's now ready for looking at the timing bolt. Easy. Right, welcome back. It's been a couple of days. I've been waiting for the tools to arrive. What we're going to be changing down here is this idler pulley near the top, this small idler pulley just above it, the tensioner which is there, and you can see that idler pulley. Let's get the camera in better position just there. We'll be changing that as well. Also, you must change the water pump when you do this job, because more than likely with the mileage the bearings will start to go, and it's uneconomical not to. They're cheap enough. So that's what we're going to do. The high pressure fuel pump, which is here, we're going to change these 3 bolts for new ones, and so that's what we're going to be doing. Before we can change the water pump, obviously we need to drain some coolant out. Right, let's get the crankshaft lined up at top dead centre. So I'll just go back under the wheel arch. Just bear with me. Right, we've got the crankshaft sprocket there, and the timing mark on this, it's always the side of one of these bolt holes. So looking at this, it's just a very small groove. Yep, there it is. You can see that groove just at the side of this bolt hole here. That and that tooth, that is a timing mark. So that needs to be roughly in this position for top dead centre, but you've got to make sure that this tool fits on. You can see the timing mark on the tool. That literally just slots into there. This dowel locates into that hole there. So once we've got this round to roughly this position, in line with this hole here anyway, we should be able to put this tool on. These 2 timing marks, we can get them in line. Okay, so to do that we need to turn the crankshaft clockwise using a 19mm 12-point socket, and let's give it a go. Right, okay. You see the camshaft sprocket just there. Now on the camshaft sprocket there's an elongated hole, as you can see, around about the 7 o'clock position, and that's just there. If you can see there, just in the centre of the hole behind it, there's a hole through the pulley and into the cylinder head. That's where the locking pin for the camshaft sprocket goes. So looking at this, it's in the right position. The slot's around about 7 o'clock. The hole is there in the middle-ish, which is just about perfect, and we're now ready to put this pin in. Now this is the pin that we use, and it literally just slots in there into the hole and straight through, straight in. So that's the camshaft pulley now locked off in the right timing position. When you're doing this, if the hole is at this side, the elongated hole, that means that the timing is 180 degrees out, so you're going to have to turn the crankshaft pulley another 360 degrees to get this camshaft sprocket to the right position. basically for every one rotation of this camshaft sprocket, there's 2 rotations of the crank. Right, next we're going to back to the camshaft sprocket. We're going to undo these 3 bolts that hold the sprocket on. We need to change them bolts for new ones. We're not going to remove them all, so we need to change them all one at a time. Take one out, put one in before we do the next one. When you put the new ones in, just put them finger tight enough so this will just rotate but not wobble. So that's our next job. These are the new bolts we've got for that. There's 3 new bolts. I'll use a 15mm socket or an M8 spline bit for them. And then similarly, if you move over to the high pressure fuel pump, we need to replace these 3 bolts. Exactly the same procedure. Take one out and replace it, then go to the next one, and then leave them finger tight again for final adjustment. And these are the new bolts to replace them. You might find that these new ones are slightly longer, but don't worry about that. There's plenty of room for the threads to go. So we'll once that's done, we'll loosen the tensioner, 15mm nut there, just enough for it to rotate but not come off, and move to the next step. Okay, we'll do that now. Okay, that's all the bolts replaced. Just that's the camshaft sprocket, new bolts in, just finger tight so that they can rotate on the slots, so we can make final adjustment to the timing later on. Similarly, we're doing exactly the same with the high pressure fuel pump ones. Okay, they're replaced one at a time. You need a M10 spline bit for that, which is this one here, M10. Okay, right, I've loosened off 15mm nut on the tensioner, so it's now giving us a little bit of slack in the belt, but not yet enough to remove it. So the next we'll be replacing this upper roller, which is a small one. That's a 13mm nut. When you take it off, keep it in the right way that it came off, so that we can make sure the new one goes back on the same way. Came off that way. It's just a bolt. There's no stud on that one, so put that back in there. That's going to be replaced with this new one, which it doesn't matter which way you put it round, but the writing on the new one on the inside there is actually facing the cylinder head, so we'll put that the same as the old one. So that's that, and that's the new bolt for it, so we'll pop that in there so we know where that is. The lower roller came off, the nut came off, and the roller came off in that position. That's actually on a stud. Okay, so that's the old roller. So I believe that's the new stud, and that's the new roller there. So we'll pop that there, just so we know we've got everything together. We'll pop that in there, and we'll pop a new nut on there ready. We've got the idler gear, the idler roller, which is going to be replaced, and that's that bolt there. Just pop that there for now. The old stud for this roller from the lower down is still in position. Just there. So the best way to get that out, because it's obviously tight, is to don't mess around with grips on this, you'll make a mess. Is to put 2 nuts on this thread, tighten them together, tight as you can, and then use the inner nut, the first one you put on, to use and a spanner, and that should screw out. Okay, next job, I'm going to remove that stud. I'm going to remove this idler and the bolt, again keeping it in the same orientation it came off, so there's no confusion which way the new one goes on. So I'll do that. Alright, just an update on this this stud. This is the lower stud from this lower roller that came off. That's the old one there, look. That's the new one. Right, this took some getting out. So basically what you need to do before you do it, the only real way of getting it off properly is to screw two nuts on, just onto the end of the thread, so it's just popping through there, the stud. Tighten them together as tight as you can, and then put your spanner on the inside one and turn it anti-clockwise. You should find that it unscrews the stud. The stud does go in that way actually, with a short thread on the inside. So that's the new one there. So that's the way it will be going. So what I'm going to do now is take these nuts off this old stud, and then I'm going to remove the tensioner, and then we'll look at the water pump. Okay. Okay, that's the old tensioner out. And just a 15mm nut, and that's the stud I've took out. Exactly the same procedure for the old one on that roller. So this is a new tensioner which is going to go in. New 15mm nut and a new stud. So what we'll do is all these studs and rollers etc, we'll pop all these back on after we've sorted the water pump, just so we don't get everything wet through, that's all. So the water pump is the next job. Just show you the kit that I bought. This kit is a Schaeffler timing belt kit and water pump. You really must replace water pump. Don't try and skimp on it and just buy separate bits if you need them. Get the full kit. You get all the rollers, all the bolts, all the studs, all the new nuts, new tensioner, and you get your water pump and your timing belt as well. So that's the water pump there. So let's have a quick look at it. Okay, that's the right one. That's the right one for this vehicle. So I'll just take it out of the bag. Okay, there we go. That's your new water pump. You'll see that there's an O-ring there. Let's pop this down on the floor. There's a rubber O-ring there that goes round, which actually sits in the recess on the engine block. Just to stop that pinching or rolling when you actually insert this into the hole. Just good practice. Just get a bit of coolant, bit of new coolant, and just go around with your finger and just lubricate it. And that's that. Before we take the old water pump off, put that back in the box. Before we take the old water pump off, just it's quite tricky to get to actually. You can't do it from underneath, but there she is. Just there, sorry. So before you take that off, you need to drain some coolant. If you take it off here, you're going to get coolant everywhere. We don't want that. So the best way to drain coolant off on this model is to take the bottom hose off the radiator at the passenger side, just underneath here, and it's the one you can just see there. There's a clip just up here that you squeeze together, and then just try and manipulate this, turn it side to side and wiggle it around, and it should come off. Make sure you get a bucket or a bowl underneath it on the ground, and leave it a good 10 minutes to drain as much as you can out. And then we can get on with water pump removal. Okay, I'll crack on with that one, and I'll come back to you once I've took the old water pump off. Just an update before we start messing with water pump. I've took that bottom hose off, as you can see. It's all draining into this bucket. I've left it for about 20 minutes, just to get as much as we can out, to save any mess when we take water pump off. That bottom hose is fastened on by one of these clips, and my personal opinion, I don't like them. I think they're rubbish. They're very awkward to get off and back on again, and I just don't trust that they give a good enough seal. So I always replace them with a Jubilee clip, which you can quite easily get on and off with a 7mm socket or a Phillips or a slotted screwdriver. A lot better, a lot more compression, a lot more confidence. So I just thought I'd update you on that. Once this is finished dripping, you need to reinstate this hose back on the bottom of the radiator outlet, so you don't forget later and lose all your coolant. Okay, so I'll get ready for the water pump removal, and I'll back shortly. Okay, the bottom hose is all fastened back up. We've got a new Jubilee clip. I've removed the water pump from there. You can just see where it came from, just in a little bit of coolant. Only a slight bit of coolant came out, so you're better off putting a rag just underneath it, just to soak that up. When you've took this off, make sure you clean all the mating surfaces up. Make sure there's no build up on there or any dirt, and then ready for the new pump. Holding the pump on are three little bolts. Use a 5mm Allen key or an Allen bit, like that, just onto your ratchet. That's the easiest. Just be careful when bolts come out that you don't drop them, it's a bit fiddly. The new pump I've got down here already. That's the replacement. I've actually put silicone grease onto the rubber O-ring all the way around. I prefer to use that than a bit of coolant. And you should never put these back in without lubricating that O-ring, because it could twist, and then you've got problems with leakage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this new pump in with those 3 bolts. They need tightening to 15 Newton meters, which is 11 pounds-feet or foot-pounds, whichever you want to call it. Once I've done that, I'm going to refill the coolant, put new coolant in, and squeeze the hoses and turn the pump round manually, just to try and get some coolant going around the system, and hopefully make sure there's no leaks coming from the water pump, from the mating surfaces. It's a good idea to do that now, because there's nothing else where we need to disconnect coolant pipes. So get it done now. It might save you a lot of a headache later, having to dismantle everything again just to get to a water pump to tighten it up. So that's what we'll do, and I'll be back shortly. Okay, that's water pump finished. All the coolant's topped back up and gone round. The level will go down once the engine's running up to temperature, when the water and coolant starts going through the heater. So that's for later to check that anyway. Right, the next job is to put the tensioner on. If you notice, just there's a little slot round about the 7 o'clock position where the tensioner goes. I'll just pull the camera out, and that slot, this is a new tensioner, is for that to go in. So you locate that in the slot at 7 o'clock position, and that's where it should be. So when you're fitting your new tensioner, fit the new stud first, goes in that way. Make sure it's fully home and just nip it if you can. The 2 nuts again, like we said before. Put your tensioner on, locating that slot into the right hole, and then just put the nut on, just finger tight for now. The lower roller, you need to install the new stud, put the roller on and tighten the nut up to 20 Newton meters, which is 15 pound-feet. So your upper roller and your lower roller both want tightening up to 20 Newton meters, which is 15 pound-feet. The large roller, the idler, that can go back in, and that needs tightening to 50 Newton meters, which is 37 pound-feet plus 90 degrees. So once you've torqued it up, turn your wrench an extra 90 degrees, which is quarter of a turn, and they're all in position. Okay, I've now fitted the small roller at the top, the large idle wheel roller, and the roller at the bottom. They're all fitted. Okay, the stud for that was quite difficult to do, it's easier from underneath, and I've also fitted a stud for the tensioner, so that's all ready. They're all torqued up to the right settings, so the next job is the tensioner. So I'll show you what to do with the tensioner off of the vehicle, and tell you what tools you need to have ready. Right, this is the tensioner, so you need to install it on the vehicle with that peg into the slot as I mentioned earlier, over the stud. And then what you need to do is turn this, you can do that with your fingers, fully anti-clockwise until you can get a 5mm Allen key in there. It's basically to lock the tensioner. What you do then is use this 6mm tensioner tool, it's just a 6mm Allen key, and turn this clockwise, and you'll notice when I do it that this arrow, this pointer, will go right past here, the gap, and stop round about here, fully clockwise till it stops, and then tighten the nut up. So it's fit the tensioner over the stud, put the nut on finger tight, turn this anti-clockwise, 5mm locking Allen key in there, 6mm Allen key in there, turn it fully clockwise until it stops. You'll see that pointer go around past that gap to about this position, and then tighten the nut, the 15mm spanner. Just sort of nip it up so that it stays in position. And that's it, so that's what we'll do next. Okay, that's the tensioner on. As you can see, I've slid it over the stud and put the nut on finger tight. I've then turned this adjuster fully anti-clockwise and put this Allen key in, and then I've used this 6mm Allen key tool which comes with the kit and turned it fully clockwise, and you'll see that pointer has gone right past that gap to there. It won't go any further, fully clockwise, and then I've used this spanner to tighten that nut up so it stays in the position that it's in. So you need to leave this Allen key in position for now, because once we do release it, that tensioner will go back that way and it'll tension the belt up, and then we have to adjust this again to get that pointer midway between in that gap there. So that's what we've done. So you need to have that ready, 5mm Allen key, your 6mm tool to turn the tensioner, and a 15mm spanner ready. to tighten that nut. Okay, we're nearly ready for the timing belt. So what we need to do next is, using this locking pin out of the kit, is lock off the high pressure fuel pump. That's the first job. So if we go in there, it goes around about the 7 o'clock position. So you see there's holes around here. So that's the nearest one to 7 o'clock. So if we put this pin in there, that's now butting up to the pulley. So if we just slowly turn it round, there you go. That's gone in now, and it's fully locked off. So just turn that clockwise as much as we can. Turn the camshaft pulley clockwise in its slots, making sure the locking pin is still in place, and also making sure, as you can see down there, the crankshaft locking tool is still in place. And then we're ready to fit the belt. The belt goes on in the following order, using the crankshaft as your starting point. Up the left hand side goes onto that little roller, and it goes round the tensioner, round the camshaft sprocket, and then you just wait on a minute. Then you go from the right hand side of the crankshaft pulley, which is just there, up to the water pump, round this side of the pulley. Well, just stop there. Then you need to go back to the other one from the camshaft, the top one. This little roller round the fuel injection pump sprocket, and then you'll end up with both parts of the belt above and below the idler wheel. Just slot them over the idler wheel. Then it's in position. So I'll do that and come back shortly. Right, that's the timing belt fitted. The next job is to loosen the pulley nut on the tensioner and let it relax, and remove this 5mm Allen key, the locking tool. Once you've done that, you need to take the slack out of this belt at the top between the camshaft sprocket and the high pressure fuel pump sprocket. To do that, we need to turn the camshaft sprocket anti-clockwise to take the slack out. And while we've got it clockwise, anti-clockwise, we need to tighten these 3 bolts up to 20 Newton meters, which is 15 foot-pounds, and also tighten these 3 up on the high pressure fuel pump to 20 Newton meters, which is 15 foot-pounds. To hold the camshaft sprocket anti-clockwise, I've made a tool that fits in there and there, or any combination of opposite holes, so that we can hold it in place. This is just a holding tool, a counter tool to counter the rotation. Those are the 2 pegs that fit in the holes. So if I put those in now, that's it. They're now slotted in, so I can take that slack up and then tighten those bolts and those bolts to 20 newtons, 15 pound-feet, and then we're to the next stage. Okay, right, we've now got that slack out of this belt. We've tightened the camshaft sprocket bolts and the fuel pump bolts. The next job is we need to adjust the tensioner. So what I'm going to do is put the tool, this is that 6mm Allen key, into that hole and turn the tensioner clockwise until that pointer comes round here and sits in the middle of that little gap there. Once it's in that position, I need to hold it while I tighten this nut up, the pulley nut, to 20 Newton meters, that's 15 pound-feet, plus an additional 45 degrees. So we'll get on with that. Okay, so when you move this with the tool, make sure this nut stays still and doesn't rotate. It'll rotate very slightly at the beginning. So if I turn that clockwise, there you go. You can see that pointer now has moved into the gap, just there. It's pointing directly into the middle of the gap. There's a lot of tension on this at the moment, so I need to now torque this up with a 15mm socket. To 20 Newton meters. That's it, plus 45 degrees. So I'll just go another 45, which is about there. Remove that adjusting tool, get a bit of a wobble to come out, and then that's the tensioner, all tensioned up in the correct position, and that's the timing belt fitted. So the next job is to remove all the locking tools and pins, and then we can start rotating the engine. Make sure everything's okay, and then carry on checking and adjusting the time until we've got it perfect. Okay, we've got all the locking tools out of the way. The locking pin from the high pressure fuel pump sprocket, the locking pin from that slot, and the hole in the camshaft sprocket, and also see right down at the bottom there we've got the crankshaft locking tool off. So what we need to do next, I'll just go back underneath. There we go. Just turn the crankshaft clockwise, 2 full rotations, which is back up to top dead centre. That's your little timing mark there, look. And just before you get to top dead centre, slide the tool, the locking tool, onto the splines and hold it while you're still turning until this slots into there. So it's fully fitted. Check that these timing marks line up, and then we can go up above, hopefully fit the locking pin into the camshaft sprocket, into that slotted hole, and then check the timing arrow, the pointer on the tensioner pulley, to make sure it's in position, or a maximum 5mm to the right of the gap. So we'll get on with that. We'll turn it 2 rotations and see where we are. Okay, I've rotated the crankshaft twice, so it's now at top dead centre. The timing mark on there lines up with the timing mark on this tool. Slot it into the teeth so it slides easily, and then locate it. Make sure this lug on the back goes right into that hole on the oil seal housing, so that's nice and free, locked in position. So we need to go above now, back to the camshaft sprocket. Which is there. And it looks like the slot is back at the 7 o'clock position, just there. So we should, let's try and put this locking tool in. It should go in easily. There you go, that's gone right in, easy. There's no tension on it, no friction, it's right in as it should be. Now just check the tensioner pulley. And the arrow, the pointer, is roughly where it needs to be. It's just past the gap. That's fine where it is, because you can go a maximum of 5mm to the right of the slot. So that's fine. So what we need to do now is remove the locking pins, again turn the crankshaft another 2 full turns, lock it off again, lock the camshaft sprocket, check the tensioner marks, and do that a couple more times until you're confident that everything's okay. If your timing pointer does go out, if it's sort of in this range between the middle of the slot and maximum 5mm this way, that's fine. If it's the other way, or it's too far this way, you need to loosen the nut on the tensioner while you're holding that adjuster with that 6mm tool, Allen tool. Turn it to where it needs to be, and then hold it in position while you torque this back up to 20 newtons, which is 15 foot-pounds plus an additional 45 degrees. So I'm going to remove the locking pin from the camshaft sprocket, the crankshaft sprocket. You can see the tool at the bottom. Rotate it 2 more times and try it again. Okay, I've given this another 2 rotations clockwise, and all the timing locking tools fit on very easily. The pin goes in there, and the tensioner pulley is almost where it should be. So I've done that again another couple of times just to check. You need to do this a few times and doubly check that you've got it all perfect, otherwise you'll end up with problems. Right, the next job is to get that tool that I made, that counter locking tool, insert it into these holes on the camshaft sprocket, hold it so that this cannot turn whatsoever, and tighten these 3 bolts up to 25 Newton meters now, which is 25 Newton meters, which is 19 pound-feet. So these 3 bolts up to 19 pound-feet, which is 25 Newton meters, while holding this sprocket perfectly still. Once you've done that, put your locking pin again in there, put your crankshaft locking kit again on the crankshaft sprocket, and make sure that they're going okay. Then remove them, turn the engine another 2 rotations, turn the crankshaft another 2 rotations, and then fit your locking tool again on the crankshaft sprocket and the camshaft sprocket, and check the tension location. So it just triple checks that everything's okay once you've tightened the cam sprocket up. Okay, so I'll do that and see where we go. Now this is just to show you the locking tool inserted, the counter tool, sorry, to stop the rotation of the camshaft sprocket, and the torque wrench is on there too. So that's it, that's all done. That's the torque wrench removed. They're now up to 25 newtons, and I'll just move those out of the way. So I'm going to rotate. I'm going to put the locking pins in first, check that they go in easily still. I'm going to remove them, rotate the engine twice more, the crankshaft, sorry, and try the locking tools once again. Once that's done, we're finished. Right, that's timing belt finished. All sorted. So the next job is to start putting everything back together. Should be a bit easier. So if we start off with the lower timing belt cover, and that goes over your crankshaft pulley. 5 bolts using a T30, Torx 30. Once we've got that on, we need to put the crankshaft pulley on. Remembering that little hole there goes over the dowel on the crankshaft sprocket, and that's fixed by four bolts with an M10 spline bit. The torque setting on that is 10 Newton meters, which is about 8 foot-pounds, plus 90 degrees. And then once we've done that, we'll look at the auxiliary drive belt. Okay, I'll get this done. Okay, that's the lower timing cover on and the crankshaft pulley. That's all sorted. I'll just show you a picture of the routing of the timing belt, just in case you want to have a look at it. Crankshaft pulley. That's your water pump. That's that large idler wheel near the top. That's your high pressure fuel pump. That's that little smallest roller at the top. Camshaft Sprocket. Tensioner. And that other small roller at the bottom. So hopefully that picture might help you. And on the auxiliary drive belt, the serpentine belt, which is going on next, got the crankshaft pulley, the aircon pump, the alternator and the tensioner. So if you get it routed both ways to the tensioner and then turn the tensioner like we did before to remove it 45 degrees clockwise, in other words to the left, you should be able to slot that belt over. It is a V belt, so it's got grooves in it, so make sure the grooves sit inside the ridges of the pulleys as you do them, and make sure it's that square behind the tensioner. So I'll pop that on and then we'll look at the next step. Right, we've fitted the auxiliary drive belt. Just have a look. There we go. It's all done. The tensioner, 16mm bolt. When you turn it to get the belt on, it turns about right up to here, so it's about 90 degrees, probably a little bit more, so you can get the belt on. Then release it and away you go. I've decided to put a brand new belt on this. While we're at it, they're only cheap, less than a tenner, so you might as well do it while you're doing this job, and then you've peace of mind, it's going to last a while. So the next job is to fit the upper timing cover and then the engine mounting. So I'll get them done, and then when I've done that, I'll point out all the torque settings for the different bolts on the engine mounting. So I'll crack on. Right, just thought it'd be easier to show you the bolts and the torque settings on these engine mountings while they're off the vehicle. So right, on the lower engine support bracket, we've got these three. 1, 2 and 3. Don't forget on this lower one we've got that little nut there which holds that coolant pipe bracket, and then that's the other bolt that holds the other end of the coolant bracket. So these three bolts need to be tightened up to 33 foot-pounds, which is 45 Newton meters. So that's these engine support bracket bolts. Okay, on the engine mounting itself, you put engine mounting. You've got these two 18mm headed bolts that go into the support bracket there and there. So those two need to be torqued to 74 foot-pounds, which is 100 Newton meters. Okay, if we move to the other side, we've got a 16mm headed bolt just here. That's actually got a little thread sticking out the top. That's for the bracket for the DPF pressure sensor. And we've got a 16mm headed bolt just here. Okay, so they need to be torqued to 30 pounds-feet or 41 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. So they need to be turned an additional 90 degrees once you've torqued them up. Okay, then lastly but not least, we've got the vertical bolt, the horizontal bolt which slots through the upper bracket off the inner wing, and that needs to be torqued at 40 pound-feet, which is 54 Newton meters. So I just thought I'd show you all them torque settings to make it easier for you before you put the brackets on. Okay, I'll get these on and we'll come back to the next stage. Okay, that's the engine mount support bracket fitted and the engine mounting. Everything's torqued up. So I've now lowered the engine back in the mount and removed the trolley jack and the support from underneath. So the mounting is now supporting the engine. So the next job, we need to connect up the cooler temperature sensor with this little multi-plug, and then we need to reposition and secure the fuel filter. This little slotted bracket just here slides underneath that bolt. Just screwed it up a bit to have a bit of a gap. This top one goes there. This little bolt, and at the same time this little piece here, which is hollow, actually slides onto that thread. Just slides on, it doesn't screw on. Okay, so we'll do them jobs and move on to the next one. Okay, that's the fuel filter fitted. So next we're going to install the multi-plug for the coolant level. I'm going to install the bracket, which is this one here, for the DPF differential pressure sensor. And that goes just there, fixes there. This pressure sensor fits on the bracket, and then this multi-plug connects to it. We can reclip these fuel pipes into these tool clips here, and also fasten the wiring plug back onto the high pressure fuel pump. So we'll get those bits done and come back to you soon. Right, okay, that's everything back together. So just double and triple check you've got everything in place. Just look around for any spare multi-plugs or pipes or clips that are not fastened, and should be okay. So that's all sorted. So the last thing to do is get the battery connector back up and start it up and see how she goes. Obviously let her run a while to get up to temperature. Once the thermostat opens up and coolant starts flowing through the heater hoses, leave it sort of 5-10 minutes running, and you can then check your coolant level. But do not take that cover off until it's cooled right down, and then use a cloth or something so you don't burn your hands. So there we go. Let's see how she goes, and I'll get her started up. Okay, the battery's connected and the engine's running, as you can hear. It's a bit noisy at the moment because it's not got the engine top cover on. But yeah, it's going to let it run for a good 15-20 minutes or whatever it takes to get the temperature up, and hopefully everything's okay. Looking underneath, you need to make sure you've got no leaks from that water pump. That's the old fluid that came out, that's dry, and also no leaks from where you disconnected that hose. If you have got any leaks where the water pump is, I'm afraid you're going to have to rewind and start again. But anyway, I'll let this get up to temperature, sort the coolant out, pop the engine under tray on and the under shield under the wing, put the wheel on, and should be sorted. Right, that's the job complete. I hope you find this video useful. Please give it a thumbs up and and subscribe. Any comments or questions, please leave them below. Thanks.